Okay, so welcome. Before we actually start the talk, I always like to sit quietly with people and just transition from running around all day to doing something more serious with our minds. So we'll sit and just watch our breath for a few minutes, let our mind calm down, okay? So you just breathe normally and naturally. Don't force your breath in any way. Just let it be exactly what it is. And just focus on the sensations of what's happening as you inhale, what's happening as you exhale. And as you do that, by keeping your mind on one object, then all the rambunctious thoughts, begin to settle down. Yeah. So if you get distracted by a sound or a thought or something, don't go off and make a story about it, but instead return your focus back to the breath. So your breath is like home. Okay? So just lower your eyes and become aware of your breath. And just feel the peaceful flow of your breath. And then before we actually begin the talk this evening, let's take a moment and cultivate our motivation. And so begin just by asking yourself, well, what was my motivation for coming here? There's no right or wrong answer. What was my motivation for coming this evening? And then whatever our initial motivation was, let's build on it and think that this evening we will try and develop some mental clarity to increase our wisdom, to increase our compassion for other living beings. And let's do this so that we can be of greater benefit to others, not ignoring ourselves, of course, working for our own benefit, but not working for only our own benefit, but placing what we're about to do very squarely within the framework of making a positive contribution to society and to all living beings, whoever they are, wherever they are. And then slowly open your eyes. So this practice of cultivating our motivation before we start an activity is something very prominent in Buddhism. Yeah, because the idea is that why we do something is more important than what we do. And so often in our life, we're not very in touch with why we're doing something. A thought comes in our head and we act on it. And why are we doing it? Who knows? So often we never even stop to reflect. Yeah? And so part of, I think, living a wise life, it went off, I think. Yeah, make it a little louder. Part of living a wise life has to do with being very aware of what our motivation is. And when we have a harmful motivation, in other words, when there's the wish to harm another living being or humiliate somebody or deceive somebody, to be able to catch that motivation and instead of acting on it, transform our motivation, change it. You know? So this is actually quite special, because if we check in our life some of the things that we're not very happy about with ourselves, we often find it's because we've done things that have harmed other living beings. And when we do that, it's because we're being kind of mindless in a way. We're not aware of our motivation, or even if we're aware of it, we don't care very much about what it is. We just care more about, getting our way and saying our bit, rather than, thinking of the long-term consequences of our behavior on ourselves, or the long-term consequences of our words on the other person. Yeah. So when we're oblivious of our motivation and we just kind of do whatever, it often boomerangs back on us by us not feeling very good about ourselves. Okay? Can you think of some instance in your life where that happened? Yeah? Where you said or did something to somebody and then afterwards you said, "Ugh, that wasn't very good." That really made a mess, or that really hurt somebody. And then you stop and you say, well, why did I do that? And it's only when you stop, then you may come to see, oh, well, I was frustrated, or I was angry, or I felt hurt and I wanted respect. Yeah, or whatever it was that was going on in our mind. We only come to realize it after we acted. But after we acted, it's good to realize what the motivation was, but the thing is, after we've done it, then we have to experience the results. We can't take it back. Whereas if we become more aware of what we're thinking and feeling before we speak, before we act, that gives us more ability, more power to regulate our speech and our deeds, and have more awareness and really make wise choices in our life. Because so often, like I said, we just act on automatic. A thought comes in and we follow it. And sometimes we're not even sure where those thoughts come from. Yeah? And so it's very helpful to try and slow down a bit and think of, what are the kinds of thoughts going on in my mind day in and day out? What are my habitual thoughts? What are my habitual emotions? And where did those habitual thoughts and emotions come from? Yeah, they're coming from inside of me. They're my thoughts. They're my emotions. Yeah, so they're coming from inside of me. I'm responsible for them. But I've also been influenced by the external environment, by society, by my family, by the people around me. And so, you know, what we've been conditioned to think or do also influences us quite a bit. And so often we're just not aware of our previous conditioning and the kinds of values that were inculcated in us when we were growing up, or the kinds of emotions that were condoned or disparaged when we were growing up. Yeah. So I think a lot of this process of self-awareness has to do with looking at what's coming from us, but also recognizing the influence of the environment, and then being able to choose what we think is wise, instead of simply letting the media tell us what to believe, letting other people tell us what to think, you know, letting society tell us what's important. So instead of doing that, to really stop and reflect in our life on what is my life about, and what is really important, and what do I think is worthwhile. Okay, so we're supposed to tonight talk about life is short, what are you going to do with it? So this is very important in answering that question. Now, is to have more self-awareness about our own conditioning and how we're responding to that conditioning. Okay, let's see if we can come up with some examples of how that works. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot, the media tells us what we're supposed to look like. Yeah, there's a certain image of what men look like in the media, what women look like in the media. And we all go around trying to look like that in one way or another. Anybody here feel like you've succeeded in looking the way the people on TV and in the magazines look? No. Anybody here satisfied with the way your body looks? No. Okay. So here we are, we're inculcated with this vision of what we're supposed to look like. But nobody really looks like that, including the people who we're looking at, because all the photographs have been airbrushed or whatever, and in the movie studios everybody's made up and the shots are taken in different ways. So we're all kind of conditioned to look in a certain way that nobody has yet succeeded in looking like. Okay? So this can bring a lot of frustration in our lives. Yeah? A sense of constant dissatisfaction with our bodies, with our appearance, I should look different. Yeah. When I, went to college back with the dinosaurs, you were supposed to have long, straight, blonde hair. I had brown, curly, short hair. You can't imagine the suffering I underwent as a teenager. I grew up in California, so I was supposed to look like a surfer girl. There was no way I was going to look like a surfer girl. Okay? And so we're kind of taught by the media, by these images, that we're not good enough. We don't look the way we're supposed to. something's wrong with us. Okay. So of course we try and use the laundry detergent they tell us to use, and the toothpaste they tell us to use, and shop at the places they tell us to shop. But it doesn't solve the problem, does it? Yeah. So the only way really to feel content, at least with our body, is to realize the falsity of the conditioning that we received and throw it out and say, that is not true. Yeah. And however I look is okay. Yeah. That's hard to do sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. When your friends look at you and say, yeah, or whatever. Yeah. I find it very interesting. Sometimes I'm asked to go into high schools to speak. So the students always ask, well, why are you wearing these clothes? And why don't you have any hair? Okay. And so I try to explain, well, the clothes, it's like a uniform. Yeah, this indicates to people that I'm a monastic. I'm not going to win a beauty contest wearing these robes, but actually I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not out to pick up a man. That's not my goal in life. Yeah. But they're even more curious about my hair, or lack thereof. And why do you cut it off? And so I explain, well, this goes with the outfit. And and our hair is a way that we can really get attached, whether you're male or female, your hair is important. Yeah. And the guys who don't have enough of it are really trying to get some of it. So, our hair is in, all wrapped up with our appearance and our self-image and everything. So, as a monastic, as a monastic, we're trying to, we cut off our hair. Not cut off the sound. These things have their own temperament, yeah. So, we cut off our hair. It's a sign that in our spiritual practice, we're trying to free ourselves from ignorance, clinging attachment, and anger. Those are called the 3 poisonous minds that create so much trouble in our life. So we're trying to give that up. We're trying to give up our vanity about our appearance. And then I tell the kids in high school, I don't really, how I look on the outside isn't what's important, because if people like me based on what I look like on the outside, then those relationships are not going to last so long, because I'm getting older and uglier. And actually we all are. Yeah. So if I'm trying to attract people based on my appearance, that's going to go nowhere very fast. Okay? So I tell them I'm trying to create inner beauty rather than external beauty. The idea being that if there's internal beauty, if there's a heart of kindness, then people will like me for what I am, not for what I look like. And if I sustain my kindness over time, then the friendships will be much more reliable. And these high school kids go like, they've never heard anybody in the world talk like that. Yeah? You don't care about what you look like? What kind of weird person are you? You know? You care about about having internal beauty? What in the world is that? These kids ask, you know? So they think that they have a Martian in their classroom. But it does make them think because they see that I'm happy. Yeah, and there's nothing that kind of proves your point better than if you're a happy individual. Yeah. So it's like, she doesn't have any hair and she's happy. And she wears the same clothes every day and she's happy. And she doesn't have a cell phone. She doesn't have a smartphone. Oh my God, what is this person? You know, how can that? I mean, the cell phone is just, it's part of me. You know? She's missing part of her body. And she's happy. I mean, how peculiar. You know, but it's this kind of thing to stop and look. And what have I been taught to believe? And how am I just following what I've been taught to believe without ever stopping and thinking if it's true or if it's beneficial? Yeah. It's like everybody has a smartphone, so you buy a smartphone. Why? Because everybody has one. And then pretty soon you can't live without it. But what kind of reason is that to do something? Because everybody else has one. What kind of reason is that? I don't think it's a good one. Just because everybody else does it, so what? You know, is it wise? Is it beneficial? Is it going to bring happiness to a great number of people? Well, if I get a smartphone, all the retail stores are going to be happy. But I don't think that's the purpose of my life, to make people happy by being a good consumer. Okay? And that's another thing we're encouraged to do, that we're taught to do. You know, how are you supposed to be a good American citizen? Consume. Isn't it? You know? Those of you who remember 9/11, you know, and what President Bush told us to do after the Twin Towers fell and the Pentagon was, you know, shattered and everything. What were we told by our president to do? Go shopping. Yeah? Be a good patriotic American and go shopping. Excuse me? We're already using more than our fair share of the world's resources. We're threatened by climate change. And we're supposed to go shopping and consume more, and that's good for the country, and that's good for the world. And that's what people did. They went out and went shopping. Stupid, if you ask me. Yeah? Yeah, I mean, that was the leadership we got after 9/11. We were supposed to hate people, and we were supposed to go shopping. And, you know, I don't buy either of those things. I don't want to hate other people. Yeah? I don't care what they do to me. I don't want to hate them. Because if I hate them, my mind is miserable. Yeah? And yet, that's what we were told to do. Hate them. But, I mean, are you happy when you hate somebody? Are you happy when you fear somebody? You know, at that moment in history, you know, people, because I have many friends internationally, they all say, you know, wow, when 9/11 happened, our hearts went out to the Americans. But then when we saw how the Americans acted after that, forget it. Yeah, because we were acting angry, we were hating, we were continuing to, use more than our fair share of resources. And so we blew away all that sympathy that the world was offering us, because we didn't really stop and think. Yeah. Okay? So when we're talking about, life is short, what are we going to do with it? I think we have to stop and think about that and not just follow the ideas that pop up in our mind and not just follow what society tells us without thinking about it and not just do what our family expects of us without thinking about it. Yeah? Because so many of us are conditioned, Our family thinks we should do X, Y, and Z, or our friends think we should do X, Y, and Z. So we want other people's approval. We do those things. Yeah? But then how are we living our life? We're doing what we think they think we should do. So whose life are we living? What kind of life are we living? Yeah, we're trying to figure out what other people want us to do so that they'll approve of us, so that they'll like us. We're not thinking about what is ethically sound. We're not thinking about what brings benefit and what brings harm. We're just thinking about, how can I get people to like me? How can I escape blame and get approval? How can I have a good reputation? But is the purpose of our life to have a good reputation? That's another thing we've been taught to believe since we were very little. Yeah, you have to have a good reputation. So we do all sorts of backflips to try and have, whatever group of people we're in or whatever society we belong to, have a good reputation among that group of people. And we're taught to just do what we think other people want us to do so that they'll like us, because we can't bear criticism. Yeah, but that's not a good way to live our life, because we get involved in all sorts of, there's an Italian word, stupidaggio. Yeah, it's a good word. We don't have that word in English. But you get involved in a stupidaggio. And, and it's dumb. Yeah. So I think we really have to stop and think, what kind of human being do I want to be? What are my values? What are my principles? What is important in my life? Yeah. And so that involves, stopping and turning inward. Yeah. So often we're just externally oriented in the environment, so focused on sense objects and other people. But we need to really figure out what's important in our life. We need to stay still and look inside. And we need to learn how to become friends with ourselves. They don't have a course in school called Becoming Friends with Yourself, do they? No. Wouldn't that be a good course to have? A course that teaches you how to become your own friend, because we're the ones who live with ourselves 24/7. Yeah. And yet, how many of us like ourselves? One person, good. Because 2 people? Oh, a few of you. Really? Okay. Because my experience is when I get to know people, especially in the West, there's a very deep-rooted self-criticism or self-loathing or low self-esteem, that kind of stuff. Anybody here suffer from that? Any of the people who said they liked themselves suffer from that thing? Oh, Okay. So that's what I mean, like a course on how do we like ourselves when inside we're filled with shame and guilt and self-loathing. Yeah, very difficult to like yourself if you have those kind of ideas and thoughts and feelings about yourself. Okay. So I think we need a course in how to become our own friend. How to develop some self-acceptance. Self-acceptance, you say? Self-acceptance? If I accept myself, I'll be complacent. I won't make progress. I can't accept myself. I've got to strive for higher and better. You have that thought in your mind? Yeah? I once talked to somebody who was a guy, he was an Army Ranger. Okay? So he knows how to put out effort and attain certain things. And but he had a big problem with not liking himself. And I tried to talk to him about, you can accept yourself the way you are. That's fine. You can accept yourself and still try and improve and change in the future. But it's fine to accept yourself because you are what you are. And he said to me, but if I accept myself, then I won't try and be better. And I thought, no, it's not like that. If you don't accept yourself, then you won't be able to become better. Yeah? Because when we're always talking to ourselves in a harsh voice, like, you idiot, why didn't you study harder and pass that test? You jerk, why did you do this? Nobody loves you. We say to ourselves, nobody loves you. Everybody hates you. What's wrong with you? Why do you do this? I mean, we're really sometimes so harsh with ourselves. Much more critical with ourselves than we are with other people. Do you think? Yeah? So how are we going to improve ourselves if we talk that way to ourselves? Yeah? How are we going to grow to be loving, kind, beautiful individuals if we're always saying to ourselves, you should do that, you should do that, what's wrong with you? That kind of way of talking to ourselves is not going to encourage us. It's not going to bring out our good qualities. It's not going to solve our problems. It's going to make us more crazy. And yet there's a part of us that's afraid to drop that inner critic. Yeah, really quite interesting. That inner critic, which is actually an enemy, I think. Yeah. We don't want to let it go. Yeah. Our anger, which torments us, we don't want to let it go. So something's wrong here, I think. Yeah? And, one of the things in Buddha's teachings is that, on a foundation level, we're taught that the basic nature of our mind is something clean and pure. Yeah, something undefiled. That all these mental distortions are not the nature of our mind. They're like clouds in the sky. The clouds are in the sky, but they are not the nature of the sky. The clouds can be eliminated, and you still have the clear sky. So too these defilements, the ignorance, anger, clinging attachment, jealousy, arrogance, these kinds of things are all like clouds in our mind. They're not the nature of our mind. Okay? So if we see some kind of attitude or emotion in ourselves, even though it may be very ingrained, even though it may be very habitual, we should know that it's not the nature of who we are, and that there are ways to eliminate it. Okay? And this is one of the beautiful things I found in the Buddha's teachings, is that the Buddha didn't just say, don't be angry. He explained how to transform our mind so that we aren't angry. Yeah. And he didn't just say, love everybody, love thy neighbor as thyself. He said, okay, if you want to really care about people, think about this, then think about this, then this and this and this. Okay? So there was an actual method of how to transform our mind, and I found that very attractive, and I found when I practiced it that it actually worked, and it's possible to transform our mind. But again, to do that, we have to have some kind of ability to look within ourselves and to start out with accepting at least where we are right now, so that we can then make, step-by-step efforts to change and become the kind of people that we really admire. Yeah. And when I talk about becoming the kind of person you want to be, I'm not talking about winning awards and getting trophies and, diplomas and things like that. I'm talking about becoming the kind of human being that is a good human being, who is happy, who is joyful, who can live their life in a meaningful way. Yeah? Diplomas, money, fame, all these things may or may not help you to be happy. Yeah? So we have to really stop and ask ourselves, what is worthwhile and what is the root of happiness? Because we run around trying to get a lot of things and we're not even sure if they're what we want. So it's important to think about this kind of thing, because we usually think, oh, money makes you happy. So we try to get a lot of money. Yeah, we're the richest country on the planet. Do you think Americans are happier than other people? Yeah, we may have more physical pleasure, but we still can't prevent aging, sickness, and death, no matter what we do. And my experience, because I've lived a lot abroad, is that we may have more physical pleasure, but we have much more mental suffering in this country than in third world countries. Yeah, it's really amazing the kind of mental suffering that just permeates our society, despite our wealth. Yeah, so that's why, why are we working so hard to get wealth if that's not something that's necessarily going to make us happy in the long term? And how is it that sometimes people who don't have a lot of wealth are much happier than people who do? Kind of what's going on there? Yeah. And then we all think, oh, fame, fame brings happiness. I want to be famous. Okay, well, in the media, we know about a lot of people who are famous. Do you think famous people are happy? Yeah. What goes on, I remember we were sitting in the dentist, we went to the dentist a few weeks ago, we were sitting in the waiting room, and there was a People magazine, And there was somebody on the cover, I forget who it was, but it was like, so-and-so and so-and-so, their marriage is falling apart, or they're getting back together after being separated. And I looked, we were at the office together, I looked at her and I said, would you want your private life written about in a magazine? With an announcement about how your marriage was on the cover of the magazine? Really, would you? Do you want your private life on, on a magazine cover? Do you want people in the dentist office reading the article and saying, oh, did you know she said this and he said that and he did this and their marriage is blah, blah, blah. And I think she should do this and I think he should do that. Do you want people discussing your marriage in the dentist waiting room? Yeah? But when you're rich and famous, or you're a Hollywood movie star, or you're an athlete, that's kind of what you're asking for, isn't it? It's like, I value my privacy. So, are you really happy with fame? We just had the elections, and we see the people who win the elections, and they're all going, yay, I won. It's kind of like being in high school in a popularity contest. Look, I'm student president. That means everybody thinks I'm wonderful. I must be a good person if they all vote for me. But, as soon as you were in a leadership position, get ready, because the primary duty of the leader, the primary function of the leader, is to get blamed for everything. Yeah, and if you aren't prepared to get blamed for everything that goes wrong, don't look to be famous, don't look to win the race. Because all that happens is, it's not that when you have power you can do whatever you want. That's not that way at all. Yeah, you really have to take the blame for things that aren't your responsibility, just because that's where the buck stops. Yeah. So I always say, be careful about who you're jealous of, because you might become like them, and then you'll find out how miserable the people you're jealous of are. Yeah. Because we can spend a lot of time being jealous of other people. Can you think of somebody you're jealous of? Everybody? Off the top of your head? Can you think of somebody you're just a little bit jealous of? You don't want to admit it, of course. Yeah. But it's there inside, so don't. We're among friends. We all know that we're jealous of people, so you don't have to pretend you aren't. Yeah. But if you think of somebody you're jealous of, and then you think, well, what if I became that person? Would I really be happy? Would I have everything I want? And then you start realizing the suffering that the person you're jealous of has. Yeah. And then you start going, oh, well, maybe I'm not so jealous of them. Yeah, maybe what I have is good enough. Maybe who I am is good enough. Okay? So these are the kinds of questions and a kind of examination that I think is very important in our life to do if we're going to live a meaningful life. So that we don't arrive at the time of our death and look back at our life and go, what in the world was that about? Yeah? I've always had the feeling since I was quite young that I don't want to die with regrets. And if you don't want to die with regrets, then I realized you can't live with regret. So what that means is You have to think before you do something and make good decisions. And when you make lousy decisions and you wind up in a mess, learn from it. And those two things are the only way to not arrive at the time of death with regret. You know, slow down and make good decisions. And when you blow it, learn from the situation. Yeah, because we all will blow it at one time or another, won't we? Yeah. But a lot of people blow it, and then they just then they renew this inner self-critic. Oh, look at me, I didn't stop and do something right. You know, I got myself in this mess and I can't get out of it. Now it's going to affect my whole life and I'm so stupid and what's wrong with me? Yeah, all that kind of stuff is useless talk, and it's actually not true. From a Buddhist viewpoint, that self-criticism is an afflictive state of mind that we need to let go of and release. It's not telling us the truth. Okay? But, you know, to be able to look and say, okay, I made a mess. What was going on? What was I thinking? What was influencing my decisions? Oh, I was operating under attachment. I exaggerated the good qualities of someone or something, and there were plenty of red flags, but I was so infatuated with that person or with that opportunity that I totally ignored the red flags. You know, oh, I need to slow down in the future and go more slowly, and when I see red flags, acknowledge that it's a red flag, instead of being caught up in my dreams about this illustrious future that I think I'm going to have. You know, being caught up in some big extravaganza daydream and ignoring the reality of the situation. You know? So if we do that, then we can really learn from our mistakes. And then our life actually becomes, we can live in a much better way with much more wisdom and much more compassion for other people too. Okay? So I've kind of, you know, gone on about several different topics here, all centered on that theme of how to live a meaningful life. What I'd like to do now is open it up and have you ask questions or make comments or whatever. Yeah.
Building on your comments about Madison Avenue and telling us how we should look and what we should wear, and which has been very much a disservice, probably more to the female gender than the male in history. And capitalism is based on that. You've got to have consumerism, otherwise capitalism doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So how does being a Buddhist and being a capitalist work?
Well, maybe you better find somebody who's a Buddhist and capitalist.
My mother is a Buddhist Catholic.
Okay, yes, what does she say?
Capitalist.
Capitalist.
She's a Buddhist Catholic.
Okay, and what does she say about that?
Doesn't say anything about it.
Okay. I think if, you know, I would like to call into question if you have to have rampant consumerism in order to have capitalism.
Well, rampant, no, I don't agree with that. You don't have to be rampant. You've got to have consumerism.
Yeah, but people are going to consume anyway because people need food and clothes and shelter and medicine. So, you know, I mean, that's why we have an economy, because different people have different goods and they exchange it. So that's consumerism. And that's just going to happen naturally because people will, you know, buy and sell things or trade things. Yeah. So I don't think there has to be some kind of contradiction. But I think that, you know, in Buddhism we really emphasize compassion. And I think that you have to, for capitalism to really function in a good way over time, you have to imbue it with compassion. I think what happened in history is Capitalism became associated with the individual and with working for yourself and doing what's good for you. And the idea is that if everybody's going around doing what's good for them, somehow the best thing will come out of that. I don't think so. Yeah, because I think when everybody's just focused on what's good for me, that you're going to wind up with a mess. And I think this is part of the problem our country has right now, with the difference, in the social classes, and I forget the statistics, but the top 1% of the population has, how much percent of the wealth is it? No, I think it's 80. Yeah, and then the other 99% of us have 20% of the wealth. It's some incredible disproportionate thing like that, Now, how long is that really going to work? That is an effect of capitalism, but is that really going to work in the long term? Can you create a peaceful society when things are so skewed like that? No, it's not going to work. Yeah, to really have a society, where people can live together harmoniously, you have to have more equality. So just this idea of I'm going to work for me alone actually leads us into a dead end. Yeah, His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about this a lot, and he says, if you're going to be selfish, be wisely selfish and take care of others. Because if you don't take care of others, you're going to suffer. Because you can live in your own palatial wealth, but you're going to have to live in a prison. And you're going to have walls and barbed wire around you to keep everybody else out. Yeah. In some of my trips to Latin America, I see this very well. There's a certain extremely wealthy class. You walk in those neighborhoods, they look like prisons. They look like prisons. The whole front of the house, no windows, total walls. The whole house is surrounded by a wall. There is razor wire on top of the wall. I don't want to live like that personally. With so many alarms, because I'm afraid of people breaking in. And every time I go out in public, being afraid of other people that they're going to, steal my wealth. I don't think that brings happiness. So, if you really want to be happy, we have to create a society where everybody can, have some kind of happiness in it. Yeah? Yeah.
There's a saying that I like, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Can you talk about that from a Buddhist perspective?
Okay. So
out of that?
Yeah, so stupidity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome. This is what I mean about living on automatic. Yeah, we don't stop and think. We do the same thing again and again. And somehow we think it's going to be different this time. So I think what I have found very effective in my spiritual practice is to cultivate patience with microphones. Okay, to look and ask myself, what are my habitual behaviors? What are my habitual ways of looking at situations? In other words, do I habitually look at a situation in terms of who's the most powerful person in the situation? Or do I look at situations with suspicion of who's going to harm me? Or do I look at situations with, how am I, who's going to like me in this situation? Are my habitual outlooks on life, my habitual ways of interpreting things? Yeah. And I find that incredibly interesting, because when I can see that and then ask myself, all these habitual ways of looking at things, are they really true? Are they beneficial? What happens to me if I live my life where every situation I go in, I'm suspicious of somebody trying to cheat me? How does that influence my life? What happens if my habitual thing is, whoever I'm with, I need to be right? Whatever we're talking about, I need to be right. What effect does that have on my life? What effect does it have on the people around me? Okay? So to see those things that I do want, again and again, and stop and examine them and say, is this really the way I want to continue to do things? No, I don't want to be a suspicious person. No, I don't want to always go into every situation looking, seeking to have the last word. Now, what's important to me is to be able to connect with other people and to be able to exchange in a really helpful, kind, compassionate way that enriches other people's lives. That's the way I really want to live. Yeah. So if I really want to live that way, I have to let go of some of my greed. I have to let go of my grudges. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We liked your comments about high school. I think we could all use them. But right now, I'm at a stage where we're more worried about our futures and where we'll go to college and what careers we'll have than about clothes. We're all petrified of that. So what advice would you give to us from a Buddhist perspective?
Okay, because you're petrified of what? Of
Finding a career, finding a good college.
who am I going to be? What am I going to get? What are people going to think of me? I got to get this career. I got to go to this college. I've got to sell myself to the college so that they're going to want me there. And then after I get my degree, I have to sell myself to employers so that they'll want me to work there. And then I'm going to have to sell myself to some other human being so that they'll love me. So we make ourselves into a commodity. That's what I mean. Like, what do other people want me to be? And okay, I'll make myself into that. But we can't live our life that way. Yeah? We can't. It doesn't bring happiness. It doesn't bring benefit. So I think you have to find what is it that really gets you excited about life. Yeah. What do you feel is the contribution that you can make to the planet? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Mother Teresa, you don't have to be a Nobel Prize winner, But what do you feel is your talent that you can do and do with a happy mind? And if you know what that thing is, then you'll find a college, you'll find a job. Yeah? And even your job doesn't make a lot of money, you'll do what you love anyway. Yeah? Nobody has to, I worked for a few years when I was in my 20s, and after I ordained when I was 26, I've been doing everything I've loved since I was 26. I work really hard, I don't get paid. Yeah? I don't get paid. I haven't starved, and I'm doing what I love. Yeah. There were times I was really poor, But, okay, you know, we all go through times when we're really poor. Yeah, if you're doing what you love, then, you know, the poverty isn't a big deal. Uh-huh.
I would like to know. I would like to know what modern materials you use in this world today.
What modern materials?
Yeah, like if you use a car ever.
Oh, I got here in a car. I got here in a car. I'm usually glued to my computer. Yeah, because I write. So, you know, I don't know how I got through college without a computer. This is, you know.
Maybe you use no technology at all.
Oh no, Buddhism is not against technology, and I'm personally not against technology, but I just think we need to use technology wisely, and we need to use science wisely. And instead of just thinking, oh, let's invent this, let's create that, let's stop and think, what are the results of that going to be? Yeah, if we invent this, what are the results going to be? If we create this or that, what are the results going to be? For example, Facebook. Somebody created Facebook. Did they think really what the long-term results are of social media?
Their pocketbooks.
Well, yeah, they thought of their pocketbooks. But what about the effect of society on society? You know, people nowadays don't know how to relate to living real live human beings. Everybody's world is now 2 by 4 inches. You know? I travel, I'm in airports a lot, everybody like this.
I don't know how to release Facebook.
You know, what kind of life is that? You know, and families, the parents and kids are in 2 different rooms texting each other. They don't know how to talk. You know, people have relationships online where you don't pick up the subtle body language and tone of voice, and you don't have any feeling for what the person is. Your whole life is a screen. How do you have really heartfelt human relationships with human beings if you don't see human beings? You know? And did the people who created, you know, all this technology think of that? You know, another thing I'm seeing, this whole thing of, you know, multitasking. I watch my nieces and nephews, and, you know, they're writing to 5 people, you know, instant messaging and texting, and, you know, 2 more here, and looking at this and doing their homework at the same time. Yeah? And we wonder why people can't concentrate. Yeah? And is that happiness? Is multitasking happiness? You know, they've done some research, and they found that people who multitask, they were expecting that people who multitask have some kind of special qualities, like their concentration is better, and their ability to organize material in their mind is better, and their ability to synthesize and change tasks quickly is better. They hypothesized that. What they found is that people are worse. The people who multitask don't concentrate as well. They can't change activities as easily. Then they don't organize stuff in their mind as well. Yeah. Now, did anybody ever think of that? That might be a result of encouraging people to multitask? Yeah. No, we just thought bigger, better, bigger, better. You know, and then people are frazzled. They go home at night, they've been multitasking, and they don't know how to sit still and have a conversation with the people they love. Because they're checking they're texting and checking the computer and surfing the internet, and your kid walks by and you say hi and that's it, and then your kid texts you. What kind of life is that? Okay? So I think we need to stop and like really examine, what are we inventing and what are we doing to ourselves? Yeah.
So, I kind of.
Oh, I'm sorry. These people had a question first. I'm sorry. Ask your question.
When you speak at the high schools,
Uh-huh.
start with a silent meditation and an indication to observe our motivation?
Yeah. When I go to the high schools, do I start with a silent meditation and having a look at our motivation? I try to. Yeah. Well, high school kids don't know how to sit still. They eat too much sugar, they eat too much junk food, and their bodies are like this. And besides, they've got to be moving their thumbs all the time.
Can you do that again?
Oh, you want to put me on Facebook? Okay. Okay, yeah.
I kind of have a little underlying theme that I hear that as a society we're addicted to a lot of different things. We're addicted to cell phones or consumerism or capitalism or whatever, but how do the Buddhists feel about addicted people to chemical dependency, drugs and alcohol?
How does the world feel about substance abuse and substance dependency? Yeah?
They like it.
Yeah? You think so?
I practice.
You think so? You think getting drunk, getting stoned?
They like it, otherwise they wouldn't do it. They're escaping from something or they're going for something.
Yeah? I mean, lots of people drink and drug, but does it make you happy? If it made you happy, why do you need to do it again?
I just read an article by somebody who's an expert in this field, and he said, that's not what's going on. It's the thing that is making them suffer, that's underneath, that they're so unhappy about.
Yeah.
And their way of coping with it is the drugs and the substance abuse.
Yeah.
It isn't because they like it. That's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
They're studying it, they're hiding.
And on that
Yeah.
theme,
Well, they just don't know how.
the best definition I ever heard of substance abuse was requiring a substance to maintain homeostasis. So it often starts, I've taken care of hundreds and thousands of addicts over the years. And it often starts as escapism, but then it becomes the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole different shift. And they don't really do it because they want to, they do it because they don't feel they have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, in the back.
I have a crazy question. Maybe this quote too. Buddha, I read that he said that he had lived prior lives and prior universes, which is the idea of infinite. His world's never end. And I kind of have a problem with that. Not a problem against it, but it bothers me a lot to sit there and think that this will never end. Mathematically, that's what's going in my head. That's kind of my risk with religion, the math of it. You can't count from 0 to 1. You can't. There's endless amount of numbers inside of it.
Okay.
So, and I just think is that the proper quote, and we'll stop about it.
Okay, so you're saying, like, if beginningless lives are beginningless and the future is endless, then you're saying this isn't going to end, and yeah, we just keep on going. Okay, so from a Buddhist viewpoint, the continuity of our lives has no beginning. Yeah. We're in a situation called samsara, or cyclic existence, which means that we take rebirth in bodies due to ignorance. Okay? That's why it's always be careful what you want, you might get it. Yeah, so we got a body, and we think having a body is great, but, after a while it's kind of a drag, isn't it? But on the other hand, our body is we have to use it to practice our spiritual path. Yeah? Suicide doesn't help anything at all. But the thing is that since this situation of rebirth is caused by ignorance. Yeah. It can be stopped because ignorance can be removed. Why can ignorance be removed? Because ignorance holds things as existing in the exact opposite way from how they really exist. That's why it's called ignorance. Okay, so ignorance thinks things exist in a totally erroneous way. Based on that erroneous view of ignorance, we develop clinging attachment and jealousy and arrogance and laziness and hostility and grudge holding and spite and, greed and everything else. Once we're able to develop the wisdom that sees things as they are, then the ignorance can no longer run the show, And eventually the wisdom overpowers the ignorance and uproots it completely. When the ignorance is uprooted, then all the afflictive emotions that arise based on it have nothing to stand on, and they also cease. Okay? So that state in which we freed ourselves from all the afflictive emotions is called nirvana, or liberation. Yeah. It's one of the goals in Buddhist practice. Another of the goals is what we say full enlightenment, or Buddhahood. And that's where you've eliminated all those afflictive emotions. And in addition, you've cultivated your wisdom to its utmost, your love, compassion, equanimity, and joy to their utmost, and your altruism to its utmost. And then you have special abilities due to the force of your altruism and your wisdom to be able to benefit others. And so you don't just stay in your own state of liberation, but you come back and really act to help the world. Mm-hmm.
Self-help seminars, personal development, self-help books is like a multi-million-dollar industry in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading an article. It was kind of a synthesis of Buddhist teachings, but the author wrote that self-development should be actually relational development. Can you talk about that?
What did they mean by? How did they define self-development and relational development?
That personal development is more within, itself, where relational development is more about interconnectivity with all living things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to have
okay.
thoughts on that.
I think you need both, because the word self sometimes is a little bit difficult, because, if you really develop yourself with wisdom, then you're also developing yourself as somebody who's interdependent with everybody else. Yeah, if you're really doing it with wisdom. We usually think self means me, I, alone, isolated, independent of everything else. Such a self doesn't exist. We are not independent entities. Yeah, we may feel like we're independent entities, but hey, we couldn't be here tonight unless we all depended on each other, and unless we all depended on all the other people who were the architects and engineers and construction people who built this place. We're totally dependent on other living beings. There's nowhere in the universe where we can go where we're not in relationship to everybody else. So you develop yourself and you develop your relationships, I think, jointly, together. And one of the big things is to get rid of this idea of me, the me who's really here, who's in control, whose happiness is more important than everybody else's happiness, whose suffering hurts more than everybody else's suffering. The big, fat me that is the center of the universe. And the problem with the world is that people don't realize I'm the center of it. Because if they only realized that I was the most important one and did everything that I thought they should do, then I would be happy. And the reason I'm not happy is because everybody else is nuts. And if they all did what I want them to do, they wouldn't be nuts anymore. And then I'd be happy. I mean, this is how we live our life. Stupidagio, isn't it? Total stupidagio. Yeah.
I'm wondering, in all the travels that you've done to other countries and such, you said that, you know, we have more physical pleasure but more mental suffering in this country. And what do you see in other countries? Where do you see maybe more happiness, and what factors do you see that are present there that create more happiness?
Okay. I've spent a good deal of time in India, okay, among the Tibetan community, and then also, you know, seeing the Indians. The family unit is much stronger there, okay. Now, they also have problems. There's a lot of domestic abuse in India, not so much in the Tibetan community. There's gender discrimination in both of those communities. But at the same time, the family unit is stronger, and people actually talk to each other. And very often in Asia, your self-identity is not as an individual, it's as a member of a group. And I think having that kind of identity as a member of a group adds some feeling of internal stability to your life. Whereas from the very outset, when we go to school, we're individuals, you know. And we're always asked, you know, what is your favorite color? Remember, from kindergarten, what is your favorite color? Why in the world are they asking this question? Who cares what my favorite color is? Why do I have to assert my individuality by having a favorite color? You know?
What question would you prefer that they ask children in kindergarten?
Can you look at somebody else and smile at them from your heart? Yeah? Can you look at somebody else and see that they want to be happy and not suffer just like you do? You know, imagine that, going into kindergarten and your teacher says, yeah, we all want to be happy and none of us want to suffer. And let's sit and look at each other and think that about each other. Yeah? Wow, do you realize that kid that you just hit wants to be happy? They don't want to suffer. Do you realize that the kid that just hit you is trying to be happy, and they don't want to suffer, and they're confused right now? Yeah, wouldn't that be incredible? You know, if like little kids were taught to be tuned in like that. Hmm?
Yeah, what would that do to all the bullying we're seeing in the older kids?
Yeah.
Talking about suffering, do we hide our suffering in the West? Is it more in your face in India, on the streets?
Your physical suffering is, I mean, it's in third world countries, it's right there, you know. I mean, India's changed a lot since I first went there, but, you know, people die in the railway station. People live in the railway station. They don't have a home. Yeah, so life is there. You see it. You don't hide from it. Okay? But we're all going around like, I don't get old and die. I don't get sick and old and die. That all happens to other people. Wrong. Yeah. Okay, this will be the last question.
Kind of talking about happiness and the Buddhist view of happiness. Is it available for anybody in any religion, or is the Buddhist view of it?
Okay, so are only Buddhists going to be happy? Do you have to be a Buddhist to be happy? You know, in Buddhism, we say that it's very good there's a lot of different religions in the world. Yeah. We don't say that, you know, Buddhism is right, join our football team, rah, rah. You know, we say, oh, there's a lot of different religions because people have different needs, they have different ways of thinking. If you try and make everybody have the same religion, it's not going to work. People are going to be miserable. So it's good that there's many religions, then people can find something that makes sense to them. And so we respect other religions. Okay? That adds a lot to world peace if you genuinely respect other religions. Yeah. And whatever, you know, wherever a person is at in terms of their own development, that is what is right for them at this particular time. And not to try and force anybody to believe something else. I have some kind of karma where I wind up on long airplane flights sitting next to born-again people who want to convert me. Oh, I can't tell you how many airplane flights, really. Yeah. And so the last one, he was a very nice man, you know, he was very nice. And he said he felt really obliged because he cared about me to tell me that I was on the edge of a cliff about to fall into hell. You know, and you know, and I decided to take a different tact, and I said, you know, when you say things like that, and when you tell me I'm not going to be saved because I don't accept the same religion as you, I feel excluded and judged. And you say you believe in a compassionate God. I don't think a compassionate God would exclude and judge me.
That shut him up, didn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Last time you spoke, I went and saw an acquaintance and we had a discussion, and I was informed that I worship a dead God and they worship a live God. And I won't discuss anymore. I wasn't sued after that, but
yeah. Yeah. I don't, you know, that kind of thing, putting down other people's, you know, Buddhism, we have a spirit of debate because we like to debate to get at what is true, but not to win an argument and not to tear apart somebody's belief system just because we like to prove that we're better. Yeah, that is not beneficial at all. Yeah. I have a friend who's a Buddhist. She's a hospital chaplain. And she recites the Lord's Prayer with people who are Christian. You know, when they're dying, that brings them comfort. That helps them. Her purpose is to help them. She doesn't believe in the Lord's Prayer, but she recites it with them and helps them to bring forth their faith, because that's something that helps them when they're sick and dying. Okay, let's just sit for another minute in silence. Okay, so just think, just for a minute, kind of what you heard that really, you know, intrigues you. So kind of review what you heard so you can take it home and think about it some more. And then let's rejoice at all the positive energy that we created as individuals and as a group that shared together. And let's dedicate that positive energy. Let's send it out into the universe. You can even think of it as a light in the center of your chest, and send out the light of the good energy we created to each and every living being. And you can imagine that as it touches them, it brings them peace inside of themselves. Okay. I would like to also invite you all to come and visit Sravasti Abbey. Yeah, there's brochures out on the table, there's books out on the table, and please come visit us. Or take out your smartphone and look at the Dharma talks online.